Hello and welcome to our new vocabulary for the Age of Exploration. So we are working with today the Age of Exploration. So when we're looking at our high frequency words, one of the first words we're coming up with is the New World. The New World was basically, it's where we live today, North and South America. It wasn't known to the Europeans before Columbus discovered it in 1492. So when you talk about the New World, you're talking about this new area where the Europeans did not know about. Our next word, migration. Migration is something that we're familiar with for science, where birds move from one place to another. Well, this is migration, people moving from one place to another. We saw this a lot in World War. We're seeing it again in World War, especially you will have a huge migration as Europeans leave Europe and move to the New World. So migration, movement of people from one area to another. Our next word is the Columbian Exchange. Many of you, the Columbian Exchange is this unique thing that happens during this time period where you get the worldwide transfer of plants, animals, technology, disease moves all over the world. Europe, a lot of things that we think of as natural to the New World are actually not, and vice versa. For example, when you think about the Irish and they eat lots of potatoes, not before Columbus. It's a result of the Columbian Exchange. When we think of the Native Americans being on horses, when you see the old Western movies, they don't get horses until after the Columbian Exchange. So this is that movement of all these things around the world that is still happening today. A colony is a territory controlled by another country. You're familiar with this with the 13 colonies. It will not be limited to the North America. Spain will have colonies. Portugal will have colonies in the New World in South America. A cash crop. A cash crop is those plants you grow not to eat but to sell. Cash crops, folks, one of the largest cash crops today is actually marijuana. You're growing it to make a profit. You're not growing it, you're not going to eat it. Cotton is, for an example, tobacco. There tends to be cash crops. So the farmer makes the money by selling. He's probably actually buying his own food because he's using everything he is growing to sell and make a profit for the cash crop. Plantation, these are large farms that were put in during the Age of Exploration and continue up until probably the 1900s. And you use slave labor. A lot of the crops that you were growing, the tobacco, the cotton, the indigo, they would require a lot of slave labor. So your plantations were these large farms growing cash crops that use slave labor. In South America is developed something called the encomienda system. It's a Spanish plantation. It used Native Americans as slaves, but it goes beyond the plantation system by placing a caste, similar to a caste system where you're born, that is where you stay. But in the encomienda, when a person bought land, they also bought all the natives who were living there. Our next word is slavery. These are people forced to work without pay. This is something you're familiar with. The difference between slavery during this period and slavery during World War I is this is slavery based on race. Triangular trade is the trade route involving Europe, Africa, and the Americas. What happened is Europe would send manufactured goods to Africa. Africa would send slaves to America on something called the Middle Passage. And then the Americas would send goods to Europe, the triangular trade. The Middle Passage is that special section of the triangular trade where a slave goes from Africa to the Americas. And as you can see, they were treated as property, goods to be sold. During the Middle Passage, slaves were some of the most valuable commodities being bought and sold on the triangular trade. Commercial Revolution is this period where we begin to get the modern industries of banking, insurance, investing because of the large ships. You can see you have the growth of a money economy, the growth of towns, the growth of trades. Like I said, you get the development of corporations beginning, insurance banking during the Commercial Revolution. The economic system at the time was something called mercantilism. Mercantilism is wealth equals power. Nations were all competing. Our goal was to keep as much gold and silver in the country as we could under mercantilism because wealth equals power. So you're always trying to export more than you import, and you're using your colonies to get those goods that you cannot produce yourself. Therefore not having to buy and therefore not having to buy goods and make gold and silver leave the country. Inflation. Inflation is when prices rise because frankly the value of money declines. Here is a perfect example. $20 in 1998 bought you a lot. $20 today doesn't buy you much. That is inflation. Isolationism is a belief where you withdraw from or allow no contact. It's going to happen in China. It's going to happen in Japan. And what they're going to do is they're going to not want the Europeans to come in, so they're going to limit and break off contact with the Europeans. Foreign enclaves are areas in China where foreigners were allowed to trade. It's almost like an island in a nation. So you would have this area of China and, for example, in the city of Beijing, and there would be one tiny area where foreigners could live and trade, and that was the only place that they were there that could interact with the Europeans. The Age of Exploration is going to bring forth the globalization that we are familiar with that today. Globalization, the idea that we are one community, we are always integrating, we are interchanging ideas and trade. Pretty much our economic system today. So I hope that helps. Please, if you have any questions, feel free to stop and see me. Thanks. Bye.